I was pretty obedient after that until I was a youth pastor. Anyway, okay. You guys were here reading Revelation responsibly. I just wanted to update you guys because a lot of you guys were here last week when we prayed for Chris and Peli. He passed away. The one thing I forgot to share that I meant to share this morning, or I wasn't thinking, but I should have shared this morning, was that they didn't know why he was having seizures, and they found out that they found the cause of his seizures in his autopsy. He had a type of cancer that was throughout his body, and he would have actually died from the cancer. So it really brought some good closure to the wife, knowing that it was his time to go. And this was a much faster way and less pain-filled way than dealing with this cancer. And I don't know why they didn't find it before, but they found out in the autopsy that that's what was causing his seizures, that caused him to fall and hit his head. So we're still praying for them and praying for the little girls and the mom especially. The girls 11 and 14, I think, 11, 13, 11, 14. 11, 13. So, okay. I'm going to need some of you guys to have a Bible out tonight, if you got that. And we're going to jump right in. Jesus, help us to jump right in 15 minutes late. Jesus, help us to learn, to grow. Lord, I pray that we would have our interests piqued to want to study this book more, to go back to resources, to press in. Maybe the next time we do a Revelation study, to reference some of the slides in the lectures, to know you more, to know what it means to be a follower of you more, to be in love with you more, to have a greater hope for the end more than we do today. Grow us in this area. Grow us in our faith for the future that you have in store for those of us who believe. We look forward to talking through this topic tonight and processing and answering any questions about heaven and the afterlife and the New Jerusalem. To you be the glory. In Jesus' name, amen. As always, the blessing. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy. And we're going to, Jesse, because he's got his Bible ready to go, he's going to be reading it aloud. And blessed are those who hear the words of this prophecy. So let's read it, let's hear it, and keep what is written in it because the time is near. And it's only getting nearer in case you're unfamiliar with how time works. Tonight's topic is heaven, the kingdom, the New Jerusalem. So we're going to start by reading this passage. And let me do this. We'll just sort of Tarantino it. That way we have it in our minds. So I just want us to look at this briefly, then we'll read it. The reason why I want to read these particular 8 verses in 21, 1 to 8, is because if you do a nice, close, slow reading, you'll see that it almost serves after verse 1 is the heavens and the earth pass away and the sea is no more. That's a setup for everything that has gone on in Revelation. It's coming to an end. That chapter of Revelation is closing, and then it goes into the new. All things are being made new. And you'll notice that the topics that it talks about in Revelations 21, 2 to 8, technically, it almost serves as a table of contents because they're mentioned again in these corresponding sections. So first verse is here, talks about New Jerusalem here with greater detail. Right here talks about God dwelling among men, does so again in 22, 27. You're getting the point. If you ever see an A, for those of you who haven't done a lot of different Bible studies, A just means the first part of the verse, and B meaning the second part. So 25A corresponds to 22, 1 to 5. So I want you to think about that and just have that in your mind because I will have, we'll have Hefe do some reading for us when we get to those sections. And if you're at home, be sure to grab your Bibles so you can connect and compare as well. Let me read this first passage, this sort of table of contents, and I'm going to answer a question that used to bother me for years right out of the gates. It says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. For years, I believe literally there was no ocean, and it plagued me because I'm an ocean creature. I thought, Lord, how could you create such a beautiful place that so many people love and live by and pay high rents to be near and then just get rid of it? Until one day, and I don't know the particular day, I just realized that the verse, this is the only verse that talks about it in this sense, the sea being no more. And I'd never really connected because I was so obsessed with the sea that it's in the verse that's talking about how the first heaven and the first earth have passed away and the sea was no more. It's talking about the old things have all passed away. So it's saying that the totality, it's not just saying that just the land is going away, just the stars are going away. It says everything as we know it is going away, but then will be replaced as we go into the New Jerusalem. And I'm not really, some people have said, well, the sea's no more. Maybe there's going to be great lakes. I'm not convinced that there's going to be no salt water in heaven. It's just if you read and study the patterns of heaven based on the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Eden was the thing that was supposed to show what God's creation looks like without sin, and the city is all of that, but cultivated with human ingenuity and governance. So I do not believe that there's no sea in heaven. I believe that the sea now that we have is no more, and there will be new seas and new rivers and new lakes, hopefully for the glory of Christ. Verse 2, so this is where it starts to do that syncing up with the following, the rest of the book of Revelation for the most part until the benediction. I also saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride, adorned for her husband. Then I heard a loud voice from the throne, "Look, God's dwelling is with humanity, and he will live with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them and will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes." If you've been to funerals, you've heard these, right? "Death will be no more. Grief, crying, and pain will be no more, because the previous things have passed away." Then the one seated on the throne said, "Look, I am making everything new." He also said, "Write, because these words are faithful and true." He said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will freely give to the thirsty from the spring of the water of life. The one who conquers will inherit these things. I will be his God. He will be my son. But the cowards, faithless, detestable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their share will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death." Okay, so back to the structure. Like I said, it's something worth noting. The writers of Bible books, as carried along by the Holy Spirit, do nothing by accident. They're not mincing words. They were giving Eric Young exactly what he wants, something dense that you have to chew on over and over, year after year, or you'll miss things. And this is one of those things, and there are patterns like this throughout Revelation that I see are often missed, because if you read Revelation through a Western lens, you're going to approach it and say, what does this mean in the most literal sense? But we already know literally that Jesus is not a literal lamb. He appeared in a vision as a literal lamb, but he is not a literal lamb. He is the Lamb of God, slain for the sins of the world. We also know that Satan is a fallen angel, that he's not walking around with these 10 horns and crowns on some of the horns. This is not what he physically looks like. These are images meant to connect us to other parts of the Bible. So let's do a little bit of reading here. Hefe, I'll read verse 2, and then you'll read 29, 9 to 21. 21, 9 to 21. So here, let me read verse 2 first. Then I also saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. Now read 9 to 21 of that same chapter. Oh, I better come. Can you come up here and read?
Then came one of the 7 angels, who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues, and spoke to me, saying, "Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great high mountain, and showed me the holy city Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, its radiance like a most rare jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and on the gates the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel were inscribed. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And the one who spoke with me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city and its gates and walls. The city lies 4 square, its length the same as its width. And he measured the city with his rod, 12,000 stadia. Its length and width and height are equal. He also measured its wall 144 cubits by human measurement, which is also an angel's measurement. The wall was built of jasper, while the city was pure gold, like clear glass. The foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with every kind of jewel. The first was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the 4th emerald, the 5th onyx, the 6th carnelian, the 7th chrysolite, the 8th beryl, the 9th topaz, the 10th chrysoprase?
Sure.
The 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each of the gates made a single pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, like transparent glass.
Cool. Okay, that's a description. That is quite a vivid description. We did have a brief little jaunt before we started about the intermediate heaven. So there are people that will say there's different beliefs and systems on what happens when we die now, because this is happening, the end is happening, all the old things are passing away when there is no more of this pattern of Babylon types rising and falling, rising and falling. So where I've landed, and this is based on Luke 16, is the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, and a few other passages, including Paul saying to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And then passages about resurrection and when it will take place, because resurrection happens at the end of all things. So for that reason, there's a theology that refers to what's called intermediate heaven. It's also referred to as paradise. And this is the place where you go if you die now. This place that we just read about is either literally or symbolically representative of the place we will go then and there. When we have our new bodies, when we have our resurrected bodies, this is what that description is of. And once again, Revelation is the book, and we've touched on, if I had to guess a percentage, maybe 10 to 15% of the hyperlinks of what Revelation is pointing to in other areas. I'm just trying to point out the big ones. So there's for the Bible nerds, a little quiz for those of you online, if you want to play as well. Is there any other structure in the Bible that we can think of that has the dimensions of a cube?
Ark. Wasn't the ark?
I'm just waiting to see. Which ark? Are you talking about Noah's?
Noah's, yeah.
Noah's ark is long cube.
Oh, I thought you were talking about measured by cube.
No, not cubits. No. An actual cube. Same width, same length, same height. There it is. Oh, look at you being a Bible. It's because you look like Moses. This is why you get it. Dear God, because he looks like Moses. It is the Holy of Holies, which is interesting because if you continue to read in these chapters of Revelation, you'll see that the Holy of Holies is the only perfect cube measure, at least that I could think of or find in the Bible, that has to do with architecture. And it's the place where, does anyone know what was special about the Holy of Holies? God's presence dwelt there. And in this new Jerusalem, it is a cube, and there is no more need for sun, there's no more need for moon, because God dwells there. His entire presence fills the entire measurements that the angels gave. And just for very roughly drawn, like obviously this is not a very cleanly drawn line, but I just want you guys to understand the scope of what we're talking about. This is a singular city. So if we are to take this literally, as most futurists would, and as I kind of like to do because it's fun for me to think about. People say all the time, how can all of the people throughout all of history fit in one little city and live there? Well, that's the little city. Like just the city. There's a whole world outside of the city. We know that because there are gates, and people come and go through gates. But for scope, imagine something with this magnitude. I put it on America just because for us it's an easier point of reference. Like literally, these are walls that he's seeing in a vision spanning this far. The reason why one might question if this is the literal length of the city, because even seeing this in a vision, he's saying, I saw the angel measure it. Imagine seeing a being measure something. I can't even see to Valrico from Lithia. And this is the scope of what he's saying. I saw this angelic being measuring this. So maybe he just flew off like some sort of sci-fi videography trick, and then he came back and said, here's the ruler measurement. But it's not only this roughly cubed out, but it's also that high, which means, as I shared last week, I think it was, that the topmost part of this city would be outside of what we consider breathable atmosphere. You can't even live that high in the air. This is beyond where humans live, unless you're a Halo certified jumping out of a person type of thing. So anyway, that's just for reference. I wanted to point that out, and then to go back into some of the structure that I love here. I do want to read. So I'll read 6. Or Hefe, can you read 22 verses 16 to 17? This is the final blessing, the water of life.
16, 17?
Yeah.
22,
16, 17.
I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you about these things for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. The spirit of the bride say, Come, And let the one who hears say, Come. And let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who desires take the water of life without price.
Yeah. Take the water of life without price. And this is something I'd encourage you to do just for your homework this week, to jot down questions that are unanswered or things that were always curious to you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create just a video answering any questions that anyone asks, and it won't be a class. I'll just post the video saying, here's a question, and then we'll answer it with the scripture from Revelation or the Bible. But this idea of the New Jerusalem, it paints an incredible picture to me. And whether you want to look at it in a literal sense, that the futurists would process it as, like that it literally has to be exactly those dimensions, or whether you want to say, why would there be walls with all of these gems? What is the reason for this translucent gold? What is the reason for pearls? Pearls are the only thing listed in the list of building materials that are actually organically created. I don't know if you've thought about that. Everything else is simply found and then manufactured by human hands. Pearls are the only thing that are created in nature. If you don't know, it's oysters get sand and they mucus over it and over it and over it until it becomes this beautiful pearl that we then adorn. I tell my wife they're vomit necklaces. That's all they are. So you don't want those vomit necklaces. But as you're welcome. It's worth noting and looking at the structures from after the very first verse of this section. The old is past and the new has come, to ask ourselves questions like, okay, what can we expect? If all of these new things are coming, is it going to be exactly like this? Are we going to be walking on jasper? Is there a gold that's translucent? What are the significance of all these? If John's writing this, it's another question that we'd had before when we had the 24 elders who many presume to be representative of the tribes of Israel and representative of the apostles, of whom John, the presumed author of Revelation, is. Did he see his name on one of the things? Is John saying, look, there's the names of all the apostles, and there I am. I knew I was Jesus' favorite. So what is the significance of it symbolically, spiritually? God doesn't do things on accident, and I think that there is a very clear message. One is that he has been building this foundation from the beginning. It's not a new religion. It's a religion that connects all the way to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And the theme of humanity was this: we were created in a sin-free environment, in a garden. And does anyone remember what God told us to do other than multiply in the beginning? Does anyone remember what God's call to humans were? It's okay. You don't need to go back and read Genesis. You guys, January 1 is coming up, so it's in your Bible reading plans for this next year. God calls us, he gives us authority to govern and cultivate the world. And we were supposed to take the raw materials of the world and create good things out of them. And that's literally what a job is today. In case you haven't figured that out, every God-honoring job, hopefully, is one where you take raw materials, things that are in this world, and you organize them and create them and craft them to create something beautiful to bring glory to God. And that's true whether it's music or sales or medical technology, or even like in the military. And we have a lot of military people at the chapel. Like the goal, I hope, of military people is that we would want peace. We want to take the raw chaos of nations fighting, and we want to try to create an atmosphere where there can be peace and people getting along and having working relationships. Unfortunately, in this fallen world, before everything passes away, the Bible does say very clearly there will be wars and rumors of wars until the time comes to an end. But let's just jump into this. There's just another hyperlink. As we're talking about the city, this is one of three major hyperlinks. It's not that John's just pulling this out of nowhere. It's not that the angel who's revealing this to John, or God who's revealing this to John, is pulling this out of nowhere. There are passages in Isaiah and Ezekiel and Hezekiah, I should have written that down, that are pointing to this. And here's one example. We see in Isaiah 60 where God is describing the city. So this is before Jesus, hundreds of years, centuries before Jesus came. And this is a description that's being given in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60. And if you don't think that John had read it, every person who was a follower of Jesus would have known all of the writings in the Hebrew Scriptures. The sun shall no longer be your light by day, nor for brightness shall the moon give light to you, but the Lord will be to you light. Contrast that, or compare that with Revelation 21. The city has no need of the sun or of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God illuminated it. That's the one of the questions I've also had in the literalist sense is, if God is our light and he's always in the city, does that mean if we go outside, it's always outside the city. Is it always going to be dark or dusk? Like, because I also love stars. So I love the ocean. I love stars. I love nighttime. So I've asked a lot of these questions because when I was first taught Revelation from a literalist perspective, the pastor was very adamant. There's no more sea, and I was like, I might tap out of this religion. There's no more sea. There's no more stars. I'm like, no more stars. But remember, if the garden was the first blueprint, and the purpose was for humanity to cultivate it under the guidance and relationship with God, and we were to cultivate and cultivate and cultivate, this is what the city represents. And there just happens to be this massive 1,700-page narrative and collection of writings in between. God knew that he was going to get us from the garden to the city. And the way that he did it obviously came with some turmoil, but also the redemption and the opportunity for a relationship with Jesus. But this was his plan. He didn't just come up with this plan along the way. In the very end, he said, now is my time. I'm going to reveal my grand plan. This is something that Hebrew people would have been thinking about and looking for, waiting for. This is something that many of the Hebrew people actually thought they were going to institute on earth. They thought that at some point, because remember, these people have their historical stories of God physically coming down in a pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. They had the high priest who would go in once a year, and the presence of the Lord was in that cube, that Holy of Holies. And if you weren't right before him, they would actually die. I don't know if you know this little interesting fact, but to go into the Holy of Holies, the high priest would have around, during a certain period of Jewish history, not throughout all of it, but a certain period, they would put pomegranates and bells at the bottom of their robe before the high priest went in, and they'd tie a rope to his ankle. Because if he went in and he was not right before the Lord, he would fall dead, and no one would go in after him. So they would literally put these bells and pomegranates, so if they heard a crash and a clank, and they would have the rope attached to his ankle to pull homeboy out of the Holy of Holies. Now, the contrast is that they thought that would potentially be magnified. They had no scope in the Jewish religion, even with these passages, what John would teach us and elaborate on more. So here's more comparison, contrasting from Isaiah 60. The Gentiles shall come to your light. Contrast that with the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light. At this time, the Gentiles were not, although God had told them that the Hebrews were supposed to be a nation of priests. They actually became, instead of a nation who faced outwards, they became a nation who faced inwards, and they didn't invite people in as God had called them to do. That was part of their disobedience. So they call them the Gentiles, and here it's talking about all nations. All people will come, all the people who walk in the light of Christ are the nations who will come through the gates. The king shall minister to you. The glory of Lebanon shall come to you. Contrasting that with the kings of the earth, bring their glory and honor into it. Your gates shall be open continually, not shut day or night. Its gates shall not be shut at all by day. There is no night there in the city. The wealth of the Gentiles shall come to you. They shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. The nations always referring to those who are outside of God's covenant people of Israel, bringing things in. I mean, are you seeing this connection though? So this is something that centuries before this is written, and this happens multiple times. If you just read Revelation without connecting it to the rest of the Bible, you're doing a disservice to the book of Revelation, and you're not going to see some of the richness that God intended for us to see, because we, unlike Jewish people, don't have large swaths of Hebrew scripture memorized. That's the one drawback. I mean, I literally only know 2 phone numbers by heart nowadays. I used to know so many phone numbers. My memory is so bad now, I only know 2 phone numbers, because everything is right here. Everything I ever need. I have information here. When I do Bible studies, I don't have to remember any of my seminary vocabulary, because I have an app where I literally touch on an English word and then it parses the Greek word all the way down to the Hebrew word for me. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I don't have to think. I don't have to memorize anything. The downside of that is that when you're reading the Bible, if you're not in it enough or studying it regularly, that's why I promote, just read the Bible every year as much as you can every year. And if you can't get through it, just keep reading, and don't just do your favorite books. Don't just do the highlights, because you'll miss this. Isaiah is one of the toughest books to trudge through. It is a mishmash of disconnected thoughts. If you've ever read Isaiah, it feels like somebody with extreme ADD without medication wrote this book. He jumps from topic to topic, and things disconnect and then reconnect down the road. And there's themes that he talks about, and God's angry in parts and tender in parts. It's a very unique book. But if you never got to the end, chapter 60 is 6 chapters shy of the end, you would never see this correlation. And they're not doing this in Bible reading plans. Maybe they should, like, do one Bible reading plan that hyperlinks significant texts. Maybe that might be a fun thing to try to create. I've never seen one, but just to say, hey, if this is your reading plan for the day, we're also going to link you back to this period in Hebrew history that they heard, this story, before John wrote it or before Paul wrote things, because this happens throughout the Bible. All your people, also your people shall be all righteous, which is a great verse. There shall by no means enter anything that defiles. So there will be nothing evil, no sin, no brokenness, no shortcomings that enter this city. Man, I got involved in a big old Facebook spat today that I did not mean to get into. I just posted, because I see a lot of things that are just telling people, go vote, go vote, go vote. So I posted, don't just vote, read and learn or something, and then read again, and then go vote. And it just exploded because I've got so many friends from different backgrounds and beliefs and perspectives and worldviews. And it just hurt my heart. And I wanted to pull it down so many times, but I knew if I left it up that Jared would continue to post GIFs that made me smile. So it's still up. But I thought none of this is going to be there. None of this division. And part of the pain for me was that I have so many people who are passionate followers of Jesus on different aisles of the political spectrum. And it was very clear in the comments that they don't understand how the other side could possibly be true believers in Jesus. And that's where I sort of draw the line and try to cut in the conversation and say, we're not going to talk that way about other people because you don't know them. You can't just presuppose because they don't hold the same value on one particular issue that they don't believe in Jesus or haven't read the Bible. And none of that, I was so overjoyed thinking about this as I was walking in. I was thinking, none of this will exist. Like Facebook will just be pleasant in heaven, or whatever version of Facebook there is. All gifts and memes all the time, because that's what causes. And some people will ask, like, do you think we'll have Facebook or something like that in heaven? Like, will there be technology in heaven? Will there be cars in heaven? Will I know people that I knew on earth in heaven? To which my standard answer is, do you think you will get dumber when all sin and brokenness is removed from your life? Do you think we will lose the ability to, A, know who we knew and know what we knew here? And do you think we will lose the ability to create? Because that's still what we're doing. There's still a reference of us doing things in the heaven, creating new things in heaven. It's a world that will be ever expanding. My favorite, by far, description of heaven in that sense is, and sorry, spoiler alert, but is in The Last Battle with C.S. Lewis. It's the last book of the Chronicles of Narnia, when the new heaven and the new earth are being revealed in C.S. Lewis's very imaginative fiction way. And it says that they just kept going further and deeper in. And the world was like expanding before them. And they went further and deeper in, and it was expanding before them. And it had this cool picture that C.S. Lewis is painting after the battle's all done, of riding in with Aslan and this world just unfolds in creativity and beauty and harmony and no more pain, no more loss. And that's how I picture. That's one of the pictures that I've had in my mind often when I think about the city. In the midst of all of these things, and we know that some of these things, remember, if Revelation in a lot of areas is symbolic, we can also look to the explicit things. We know that there will be no evil in heaven because we know that Christ died for it. So this passage, I can say, yes, like there's no sinful person that's going to walk in and then ruin it all. One of my kids asked me, what if someone does something bad again? Like, what if there's another tree and then someone goes for that fruit again? And I was like, dude, if there's another tree, I promise you, like, all the basketball players in heaven are sitting by it and just defense, like, stop, get away. The tree that is mentioned is the tree of life. It's also hyperlinked back to Ezekiel, because in the book of Revelation, the tree of life is described as going on both sides of the river of life that flows out of the throne of God, and people who drink from it. Are we catching some of the hyperlinks? Jesus is the water of life. Come and drink. I will give to all who thirst. And there's this picture of a river coming from the throne, right from where Jesus is. And the tree of life goes on both sides, and it says it has fruits that come to fruition every month of the year. And we don't know what these fruits are. We do know that a very similar picture in Ezekiel talks about trees being planted by the river. But in his vision, there's 12 trees. And the reason why people connect it is because it says that each tree produces fruit for one of the months. So it's one of those hyperlinks. It doesn't perfectly line up, but remember, this is a vision that Ezekiel had compared with a vision that John is having. So it's interesting to think about. It's interesting to ponder these things in regards to heaven. I do think we will have technology. None of our technology will be harmful. So I don't care where you stand on global warming or climate change. None of our technology would harm the earth that we've created, which is cool. So maybe Elon Musk is onto something. Maybe he'll be saved and we will all live in the new paradise of new Mars one day before we go to the new heavens and new earth. I'm not opposed to these sorts of things. I think that our technology will obviously be greater than what it is today, because even the best minds today are still suffering from brokenness and selfishness and self-deception. We're going to create things in the new world that are for the glory of God, to connect us to Him in love and to one another in love. One other thing about the new city, I'm trying to hit some questions that I know might come up, and if you have questions about the new city and the new heavens, please write those down, and you can ask them in a minute here. People have often asked me about marriage. That is a stumper for me, because Jesus clearly says, not in Revelation, in an explicit teaching, that there will be no marriage in heaven. That your spouse is your spouse only on earth. And when you get to heaven, they're no longer your spouse. That boggles my mind. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine you guys aren't married. I can't imagine you guys aren't married, you guys aren't married. I can't imagine. Like, I will see Dawn up there, and she will no longer be Dawn Nunnally. She'll be Dawn something else. She'll have a new name. But she'll still like Jesse more than she likes him now, which is also weird to me. But what's weird is that I will like Jesse more than Dawn likes him now. Like, think about the level of love that increases. So the level of love and affection for one another increases radically, because we will see each other as Christ sees us. So, like, as much as Dawn loves Jesse, I'll say, you wait, if I die, I'll love him more than you love him, even in this life. Just love him more. Now, not so much. I don't want to. That's your job. You guys are this picture of Jesus in the church. So here's the Bible Project. I've been showing you the clips of these from each of the time. So this is there, and if you watch it, it's pretty well done the way they creatively do this. But this passage specifically, here's the passages for the hyperlinks, for additional hyperlinks: Ezekiel 65, Genesis 2, Ezekiel 47, Isaiah 2, and Zephaniah 3. It's hybrids of these passages that the Hebrew people would have known, that they would have read at different festivals, they would have read as they journeyed along with their families. So when you read, if you just read these and then reread these last two chapters again, you would say, oh my gosh, I see, like, what happened here. Like, God is not a God who is changing. God is a God who is revealing and unfolding things as they go throughout history. And these are things that all of the people would have already been expecting. But Revelation 21 and 22 is by far the grandest, cohesive package of all of this kaleidoscope of Old Testament promises. Another interesting fact that is weird, and when you think about it, if I were to ask you who is the bride of Christ, what would you say? The church. A really weird, unique thing that lends itself to some of Revelation 21 and 22 being symbolic, is that when the city is revealed, it says that the city comes down, the holy city, this is verse 2, the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. So it's weird that we know from explicit passages the church is the bride of Christ. In this passage, and this is what lends to saying maybe it's not exactly going to be a cube, but the cube is symbolic of saying it's going to be a massive city where God's presence dwells and He is our light. But we know for sure that we are the bride of Christ. But here it's saying that the city comes down and the city is adorned like a bride of Christ. In the context of Revelation, we have Babylon, who is referred to as, does anyone remember? Middle schooler, do you remember what Babylon is referred to? Harlot, prostitute, also known as it's the only time you could say it in church. You can't even do it. In the Bible it says that Babylon is described as a whore, meaning she chased after other husbands, after other lovers. So it's worth noting that we are the bride of Christ. We're not to chase after others. This city coming down is prepared and adorned as a bride of Christ, probably representative that we are going to come down, and the walls with the names of the apostles and the tribes of Israel and all of the stones, these are all things that have other pictures and connections in the Old Testament. And this is one of the big pointers where people say maybe it's not an actual physical city with these exact dimensions. Maybe God's trying to teach us something by using these illustrations and images. I'm still rooting for a giant cube that goes into the upper atmosphere. Like, I'm rooting for that. I think it'd be amazing. Like, New York City is just a minuscule tick compared to the city of God as it's described here. So I do think it will be massive in scope, but I do know that we are the bride. A city is not a bride, a city is a city. So going back to this, the kaleidoscope, that all of creation is the temple of God and the Lamb, that humanity rules as God's image. So the thing that we were created to do, we will now do in the new city. This is when God, or when Jesus says in many of his teachings, and Paul elaborates on as well, we have responsibilities and leading in heaven. We will sit in judgment over angels. I don't know what that looks like. There's a few verses that mention that in the Bible, and it's one of those, like, so I'm going to sit in a chair, and like, what, Michael's going to come up and say, here's my resume, and I'm going to be like, you blew it, or great job. Like, what? Like, I don't know what that looks like. We don't know exactly what that looks like and to what extent, but we do know that we are elevated to a place where the angels are not. Angels are always messengers. It's their primary job, messengers and worshipers, and we are people who rule alongside Christ. The Bible calls us co-heirs with Christ. Co-heirs with Christ. It's mind-blowing to me that not only are we saved from the penalties of sin, not only is God removing the power of sin from us, not only will he save us from sin and just give us a home, but then he says your home is going to be in this scope of ruling with me, ruling this new creation. And I don't know if we have quadrants. I don't know if it's like, oh, like, Brian, you get this, half an acre. And the Publionises, they're not married anymore, but we're going to give them 30 acres next to each other, and their kids, they don't get to be near them. The kids are going to go live over with their friends or their spouse. I don't know what it looks like and what the governing looks like, but I do know that we continue to create and bring about human flourishing without the presence of sin. All the way to the very end, this is just what I want to emphasize, that Revelation is, I believe, if you read it slowly and look at all the Old Testament context and all the hyperlinks of other passages that feed into this, New Testament, Old Testament, is a symbolic vision for every generation of the church. It was, first and foremost, for the church at the time, or technically the 7 churches that we looked at 6 weeks ago. And that's the preterist view. Remember, the preterist said it's primarily for those people. I do believe that it wasn't just for them. That's why God hit print screen and put it in our Bibles. Which is why what I mean by that is the patterns that we saw unfold in the Roman persecution of the Christian church early on, and the patterns of an evil empire rising, that the Roman Empire was called Babylon, and I believe we've seen many Babylons before. I was talking to one of our military friends who's been in and out of the study, and he said, I don't know that America's going to be the greatest threat. I see China as a rising threat that could potentially be. I was like, that's an interesting thought. I never thought about it. As far as being that empire that has military might and economic might. So that's why I believe it's for every generation. I will stand by and say I do not believe that the historicist view is correct. I don't believe that each portion of Revelation represents a specific era of history. Like 1 to 3 represents the Apostolic Church. 4 to 5 represents the Church Father age. I don't believe that that's the case. I just don't see evidence for that in the book of the Bible. I see how you could read that into culture, but we're always supposed to let the Bible interpret us more than we are to interpret the Bible first. Like, we need to let the Bible say, this is what I'm about. And we need to submit under the authority of what the Bible teaches instead of trying to put our agenda on top of it. And the futurist view that would say that everything from Revelation 4 onward is only for the future and that they're waiting for a literal sequence of events, I'm fine. I'll be friends with people who are on different political spectrums and people who believe different things about eschatology, end of the world, end times things. I just think that it gives us a deeper treasure and hope and rock when we put our trust in the God who wins, the God who will one day return and remove evil entirely from this world, the God who, in the midst of all these Babylon-type empires that rise up, shows that he is one time and time and time again, the God that will continually keep his promise and reveal his promises to his people when we cry out to him, the God who will let his people go through times of suffering and still be the God who says, I'm here for you. This is the view that I take of Revelation, because I do believe, as history bears out, whether you're a futurist and you think this is the final end, or you're a idealist and you say this is one of the cycles of a Babylon rising, I want to trust in God who will be with me in the midst of suffering. The Bible promises that we will suffer, and to say that now is the end time, I really do hope it is. Like just today alone, I'm just weary of today. I'm weary of Facebook spats. I'm weary of Didi having cancer for the third time. I'm weary of Gia losing her brother. I'm just weary. I'm weary of Pele having to figure out how do they live without the husband to run a restaurant. They can't run a restaurant now that's already closed, right?
Not forever yet.
Not closed forever yet. It's just a wearying time. COVID, weary. Mortgage, like just something as dumb as paying my mortgage or seeing a water bill is just weary. And this is nothing. This is nothing compared to the suffering that people are going through right now on another side of the world and have been going through for centuries. Christians have suffered for centuries. And just in case you don't know, Christianity is the number one most persecuted religion in the world. I know we don't say that enough. We think of other religions, but especially in northwestern India, Christianity is vastly persecuted by radical Buddhists there. It's persecuted by Muslims. There are more Christians persecuted and killed today for their faith than any other religion in the world, which is shocking. You don't hear this in the news. And that's why I'm not looking forward to a future where God's going to deliver me from ever going through it, because I already see Christians going through it. I'm looking to a God who will carry me through with meaning and purpose as we cling onto his promises. And that's the end of Revelation. That's it. Okay. So questions about, God wins. Questions about, and if you're online too, do you have questions about this portion of Revelation, questions about heaven? Here's what we can do. You can email them to me. I'll write my email in here in the comments, and email me questions you have, because what I'm going to do is if you have residual Revelation questions, if you want me to answer a specific question, like let's say you embrace a different end times view, a different eschatology, and you say, hey, can you answer a question about this particular verse or this passage of Revelation, send those to my email, and I'll make a follow-up video next week answering any questions that are there. If you have questions specifically about heaven that don't relate just to Revelation 21, there are other passages that point us to different things in heaven that we can look to and look for. I think it's worth asking those questions. For me, studying heaven has been one of the more fun systematic theology topics that I've studied, because I'm obsessed with it. Jesse and I are obsessed with it. Did you read the book yet, or did you just do the study?
No, I haven't read the Heaven book.
Heaven book?
Alcorn?
Yeah,
Yes.
you did read it. Okay. So we'll keep you. We'll keep you around. And it's just something to look forward to. And if you read Revelation next year for your Bible reading plan, I pray that you would approach it with a mind asking God to show you how it connects to the rest of Scripture and how it can change and empower you to trust and lean in God's promises and the hope that he has for us, rather than just looking for a timeline and trying to figure out if Donald Trump or Joe Biden are the next Antichrist. We can't do those codes anymore. It's not a code. And I know that's... Kanye. What? It's Kanye. Kanye 2024, right? It's what's happening. So that's it. Let me pray us out. Jesus, I'm weary. And I know that when you said that, you meant all kinds of weary come to you, and you give us rest. So, Lord, I'm going to come to you right on my pillow when I get home. I want to be present with you. I'm asking that you be present with me. I'm asking that you be present in the lives of everyone here specifically, God, and online, those who have joined us, Lord. Just remind us to sleep tonight with a eternal hope that you will conquer evil once and for all, and that when evil rises up in this world, it's not unnoticed by you. When evil rises up in our places of work, or in our schools, our middle schools, our high schools, our communities, you're not absent to that evil. You know that it's there. And you're painting a kaleidoscope. You're painting a picture that we don't always understand. Lord, we don't understand why people get cancer. We don't understand why people die earlier in life or later in life. But you do. And it's all for some purpose related to the glory of your Son. So let us bring glory to him now in the way that we live with hope, in the way that we live with trust and faith, in the way that we don't fear Babylon's rising, but we know that you have risen above it all and are in control of all. Be with us tonight. In Jesus' name, amen, amen. Hey, Karen. We're leaving, but we love you. Hey, Darcy. Your mom's here, but you're not, but we love you. Hey, Lottie.
Isn't she supposed to be working?
We love you. Hey, Beverly June. Johnny Ives. Johnny Ives, we miss you. Come visit us, Johnny Ives. Fay Fay. Love you. Miss Louise, Mr. Bob, we love you. Amanda Boston, Is that dinner ready? Because I might swing by your house if Brett's there eating that dinner you made. Unless it's one of those funky things. Then I won't. But I love you guys. Have a good night, y'all. Bye. Who did that laugh? Was that you? Oh.
That's Jen's laugh. Wait, no, Jen's laugh.
Okay.
With that streaming?
Jared noticed that one of the chicks on the stream
The bride